Hi everyone, welcome to the second episode of the Techie Garage, and today we're talking about business value and getting attached to our code or our work, I guess. And before I dive into the conversation, I want to give a bit of a backstory to this topic. And yeah, sometime last year, Twitter was acquired, and there was this huge rebrand from Twitter to X. And this whole thing brought a lot of mixed reactions because positive and negative. Some people, it was retiring a brand that's been built for so many years that users already used to. People used to call it the bad app. You have things like DMs. The logo is a bad. When you do a post on the app, it's called a tweet because that's what a bad does. When someone shares your post, it's called a retweet. And there was all these memes and reaction around it that, okay, so now how we used to say retweet or check out my tweet, so are you going to say re-X now that it's X and not Twitter? When you're telling someone check out my tweet, are you going to be like check out my X? And there are all these jokes, but generally just confused reaction and mixed reactions around the rebrand. And during this time, I remember scrolling through Twitter and I found a thread by one of the guys who designed the then Twitter logo, the bad logo that we used to know. And he was basically talking about the thought process and the design process for the logo, the bad logo that was on the app before this rebrand happened, and now we wouldn't know it anymore. And I remember like looking at how we were talking about in the thread, how the design process, they were using circles to come up with the final logo, optimizing the logo to have the different logos required. And reading through that thread, I almost got emotional. I was tearing. And I think also the other reason is that it was so emotional for me seeing his work now no longer there, now that the rebrand was to happen, is because there was so much coming with the Twitter being acquired and this rebrand. We had people, software engineers being laid off, and as someone who's in that field and also working for a company, seeing the layoffs happening, seeing people I look up to or engage with their content being laid off, there was just a bit of empathy and sadness around what was happening, because some of the layoffs are also not very graceful. So you were coming through, checking this tweets about this guy documenting the work they did when it's about to be scraped off, when there's this energy around it, right? And that day just got me thinking about, as software engineers, how many times we encounter kind of a similar thing, probably not as big as a rebrand or what was happening, but just day-to-day things that you're working on something and it never gets to see the light of day, right? And I can give my personal experiences just for context as we get into this conversation, so that it makes much more sense away from the backstory. And the first scenario, at least for myself, is for my first ever role. The team I joined were tasked with working on a new feature into the mobile application that was there. So I joined obviously as an Android developer. It was supposed to add this feature, and I'll try to be a bit vague. So the feature was something like video calls or FaceTimes, and because it was a small team, your role was an Android developer, but ideally you would cover all aspects of what this feature would come about. For example, once the requirements for this feature come in, you're part of the discussion on the requirements. You work on the UI design for this feature that's supposed to go to the app. You go ahead to implement this feature on the Android end, implement and integrate. We're integrating to a third-party service called Twilio. So you do the integration on mobile app end. You also do the backend that corresponds to this feature, and because you're also handling the backend, you also do the database design, that in case there's data that's moving around, where it's stored. So basically you're part of the whole end-to-end design as much as you're the Android developer. And we did the first proof of concept or MVP for this feature, and then I left the team for a different opportunity before, after we had just finished the MVP. And a few months in, after I had left the team, I was talking to the colleague I had at that company, and they were telling me how there have been changes in the business and the company, and the app was moved from Android to now Flutter, and the feature itself was actually shelved. So they didn't even move forward with the feature as itself. And I remember being like, that's so sad, because I was really looking forward to having the work we had taken, this time to build, had like been part of the exciting process. I was really excited about seeing it out, and thinking like, oh, I see the work we did, just the excitement and satisfaction of seeing it out. So that's the first example. The second example is there was this work project. It was like a huge project for the company, and the project involved changes to most of our applications and systems. And the project involved learning and integrating several new technologies, right? So as developers, you're learning these new technologies, integrating it, doing so much research on these technologies. And now it's been like 8 months in, 6 months into this project, and you're nearing the launch of the project. And as you're trying to move from the staging environment to, say, the production environment, one of the technologies, say, had new errors that are happening, a specific production environment, and that you hadn't found in this other environment, and now you guys are trying to research and solve. And then one day you get on a call, and you hear this communications from business that because this project really needs to go out to the users, and we can't keep pushing when we need to push out this project to users. So this specific technology that is has an errors we hadn't anticipated, that we are not sure how long it's going to take to fix, we're going to completely remove it and then launch the project without it. And from a developer's perspective, it's just like, what do you mean? It's been 6-8 months of working on this thing. You've made so much progress. You've put your all in it. You've researched. You probably reached out to the support team or the person who came up with this third-party thing that you're trying to integrate. Like, you're making progress. Even for these errors that are coming up, you still can see progress. Just like there's also the point of business needs to roll this out, and they need to get value. So if this is holding us back, then we need to remove it. And it wasn't my team that was actually to remove the technology. It was a different team. But I remember being in that call feeling like I took it personally on their behalf, because you're telling us to remove all this work. But yeah, that was the second example. The third example is, as a team, you're working on this code base, and you probably recognize a bit of tech debt that you want to deal with in the app. Maybe it's a matter of you want to improve the code base so that it's easily maintainable and scalable. Maybe it's using like really obsolete things that are not relevant in the industry anymore. So just like to update it into these new things that are now relevant. And you get excited about it. You do this whole roadmap, and then you start working on it, and then along the way, at some point, you get feedback probably from business or product that we can't see direct value for this roadmap that you guys have on your end, which is technical debt. And it also almost hurts your feelings, because you're thinking, what do you mean? You don't understand how easy it will be to maintain. If, like, let's say you're doing re-architect, you don't understand how easy it will be to add features. If I was to take a month, I would take 2 weeks, because you've separated concerns, all these things. As a developer, that's how you're looking at it. But from business, it's just like, no, we have other priorities, so put this on the side, we need to work on this. But from a developer side, it's just like, as in, what do you mean? But yeah, so now that you have the context of what I'm talking about, I think the underlying thing here, or the underlying theme, is, as a software engineer, you want the work you work on, you want to see the results of the things you've put so much energy into. So if the result means this thing going out to the users, you seeing people using it and getting feedback, or now having to improve on it, or just seeing impact. If it's like removing tech, they're seeing the impact of our build times were like this, but because we've done this, they've improved to this. It's just the thing of like the thing you worked on, let it go out. You want to see the result or something tangible for the work you've done, if that makes sense. Yeah, now that you have the context, what are the solutions, or what perspectives am I choosing to look at it now, from my point as a software developer? I think the first one, which kind of speaks more to like removal or improvement of the code base, and from like a team leadership perspective, is there are teams that have a system or policies, we can call them that, such that if you have, let's say, the agile way of doing things, and you have a sprint that's, I don't know, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, or whatever period the team agrees on, every time developers or team members are picking work for every sprint, 70% of their work is work that's coming from business. So this can be new features, improvement of existing features, fixing of bugs, but generally what you can peg as business seeing as value. The second bit is the team sorting. 30% is the team sorting technical debt. So 70% new requirements, maintenance, all these things from business, and then 30% is the team sorting technical debts. And I feel like that brings a good balance between both people involved, because business gets what they feel is value for them in this 70% tickets that people pick. Then 30% work, you're able to, as a team, consistently improve your no-code base, or add things that you feel are now relevant or exciting or motivating for you as a team to work on. Yeah, and this percentage can actually shift from 70-30 to, based on what's happening. Maybe not so much is coming from business in terms of new things. It can be now 40% is business requirements and all these things, then 60% is the team sorting technical debt, and it can like fluctuate up and down based on what the company or the team feels is relevant for this specific period. So I think that's a really good approach. That's approach from, as a developer, I would appreciate, because yeah, it's a win-win situation for both of you guys. The second approach, for instance, for the scenario you are saying, you worked on this new technology or this product or something that was coming up in this product for 6 months, and now it's being scraped off. I think a way I'm looking at it now is also being able to share the things you are learning throughout the process, not specifically in the company. It can be outside to the community. For instance, you do talks at meetups or conferences about the thing that you're learning or this new technology that you're trying to do at work. You can do an article, you have a blog about it, you can do a video like this, you can write a LinkedIn post, or even tweet or an X on it, and get engagement. Or you're working on this thing, you've encountered a problem, like share it out, such that even if this thing never got to see the light of day, you learned what you learned across the process, and you're able to see the tangible things that you shared. If you did a talk about it, like when I come across this talk, I remember, oh, this talk is because I was learning this and this. Yeah, it never got to play so I can see it on the users, but like, oh yeah, I remember because I have this tangible thing outside there, like a talk, slides, I have a video, I have an article, and maybe you're able to even like gain new networks or have conversations with different people because of this thing that you shared out here. So another way to look at it is actually sharing out the things you're learning across these different processes. Even if it's like removing technical debt, what's the process like, or why the whys across why you had to do this, and how did you go through the process, what are the problems. Basically, the idea is just sharing what you're doing constantly to the community. The third point or perspective is probably just a mindset shift, because I think as software engineers, sometimes you get too engrossed in your code, because for example, if you're doing like improvements or trying to remove technical debt, you're thinking like, oh, I broke down this file from this huge chunk that's boilerplate to this small one that's so clean, or I did this and this, and then you're telling me to remove. As in, don't you understand? Don't you understand like the separation? Don't you understand like the benefits of this as business or something like that? But there's a balance between, the whole point is like you need to move away from you looking at this code as just the code itself, but look at this app as a product. Just the way when you're actually implementing an Android application, when you're doing the user interface, you think about user experience. You think like, I can't put this button here because the thumb is I don't know where, so they need to be able to tap easily. You think about the user experience, and a user is a stakeholder in this product. Same way you have to think about what other stakeholders are here. So there's you as the developer who's implementing this thing. You think about the user as a stakeholder, but there's also business. For example, if it's a company that runs on profit, they need to be able to deliver value to users so that they get money back. This money pays you. You do good work, it goes to users. Then the ecosystem sustains itself ultimately. So I think it calls for like sometimes just getting out of like the clean code you're writing, the awesome things you're trying to implement, the roadmaps we have for like this technical debt and this code base, but also like integrate these are stakeholders and like what's best for this whole ecosystem to keep running. And yeah, not to say that if you doing work and you're being told to remove it, that it doesn't matter. I think sometimes it matters, and you feel like you can probably try push back and be like, oh, I think we can do this and this, come to this compromise so that instead of removing this whole thing, give me 2 weeks probably fix, or I don't know, whatever compromise you come at. If you feel like yeah, so I'm not saying like just listen and remove out of this conversation. Like the point is not like just remove when you're told to remove. If there's a point where you can find a compromise, where you think about these things, what makes sense, then that can also apply. But yeah, those were the 3 points and my thoughts around all this. And I would really love to hear your thoughts on, that's actually it for the video, and I would really love to hear your thoughts on this particular topic, or how you choose to look at it, or if you've even gone through such a thing. Maybe you're the person who you've worked on a project for 6 months, 1 year, and you're about to launch next week, and you're told, you know what, this thing that you added, we need to remove all of it, and you're just like, fine, and you just remove, like you don't care about it, right? It could be you. So if that's how you think about it, I would really love to hear your thoughts. So please leave a comment, or I don't know, reach out on any of my socials if you want to have a conversation there. I'd really love to hear how you look at this. If you've been in industry for whatever long you have been in it. But yes, that's I guess about it for this video. If you've watched it up to this point, thank you so much, and see you in the next episode.